Next up, we have some remarks. How's transportation doing in the state of Texas? How's it been? And where are we going in the future? It's another good question, too. Jeff Austin is one of the Texas Transportation Commissioners. Yesterday, we heard from Victor Vandergriff at the Texas Short Line and Regional Railroad Association's meeting here at the Magnolia in conjunction with our conference. And today it's Mr. Austin, and I guess if we had a third commissioner here, we'd have to call a quorum. Is that right? So we don't want to, get you in trouble over that. Commissioner Austin's a member of the Texas Transportation Commission. He was appointed by Governor Perry on October 20th, 2011. So you're coming up to your end of term not too soon. Yeah, or pretty soon. Jeff Austin's Vice Chairman of Austin Bank in Texas. That's in Tyler, and he's presiding officer, has been the presiding officer of the Northeast Texas Regional Mobility Authority, and also board chair of the Tyler Area Chamber of Commerce. His full bio is on our website, along with everyone else that you're going to hear today. Please welcome Commissioner Jeff Austin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're well into dessert. Happy to be here. And I say this is my old stomping ground. And I say literally, I went to school over here on the hilltop. And back when some of y'all remember the franchise Howard Johnson's, remember when it was shut down over here on the corner, and I helped manage Capital Bank, the little drive-in over there when it was right up here off the side. And that's back when Trader Vic's was up there. So I go back. I know this area. I know it well. Love coming up here. My daughters, I had dinner with my oldest daughter last night, who's going to Mexico City and is taking a train when she gets down there, by the way. She travels. And I told her, what we're doing up here, talking about this, and she just cuts to the chase. What's the big deal? Why don't we get the passenger service in place? She travels around as a millennial. She travels around. She goes to different countries. She studied in China. She studied in Spain. Has ridden a lot of the projects that have been talked about. I've ridden them with her. It's like we've got to move around. We've got to change and go at, and that's coming from an 8th generation Texan. So I applaud her. I applaud her vision, and it's going to take the next generation to begin talking about solving problems. So you ask the question, what is the climate for Texas transportation? Does anybody have an iPhone app can tell me which way the wind's blowing? And that's kind of how we feel. As a Texan, as a citizen, I want to say 2 or 3 things. It changes. There's 3 things that I'm involved in, and I do it just like this. A couple of y'all know exactly what I'm going to say. Number 1 is banking. That's my life. I'm a 4th generation banker. We are at the foundation of economic development. We help people succeed. That's what we like to do. And I want to do anything I can to help banking and continue with what we do. Number 2 is economic development. That's where my role at TxDOT comes in, because it too is at the foundation of economic development. Number 3 is scouting. And I know we were talking with Sid and Bill over here. For those of y'all who have not gotten involved with scouting, I would encourage you to, but do so at a little more personal level. I'm a former scoutmaster, and if you want to learn about railroads, the different gauges, etc., my big knowledge came from working with the Railroading Merit Badge. So work with that. There's a way to change a generation and teach a lot of what's going on. And I think that's, as I laugh about the political wins, we have a big education job to do. And it's easy. I can sit up here and talk about the freight tonnage and everything else that's going on. We know what's happening. We know what is the population growth, where it's going. But one of the most important things that TxDOT has done recently, it's talked about a little bit probably in this circles, is something that Caroline Mays has done, is worked with Judge Emmett and our freight mobility plan. It's a magnificent document, and it talks about the very foundation of flow of traffic, goods, services throughout the state, and it can't be all done on our roadways. And I live in Tyler. I'm up here quite a bit. And we had this little thing called something we don't see very often, snow, ice. But you look at a lot of this and the trucks are stalled. But there's other parts of the state where when there's traffic delays, construction, and by the way, I do love construction signs, you're still seeing the Class 1s moving freight, and that is very important. Caroline, y'all are well aware of the study, and I love bragging on it. When we put the transponders and moving out of the 4 ports coming out, 1 seaport and 3 truck crossings, went to all 48 contiguous states within 7 days, the containers. That's going north. And what about coming back? We've got to fill up those containers coming back. We're going to have a lot of people coming to Texas. And, I want to thank, first of all, I mentioned Caroline. We have several people here from TxDOT that are here. Would y'all all raise your hand? I know Audrey's back here. Okay, I see you. Thank y'all for what you do. And I know we have several TxDOT alumni. The plans that are put in place come from, regardless of the political climate, economic development, and I'm going to, sometimes I just get pretty blunt, it's not a partisan issue. And I think that's something we've got to take a look at in Texas. Sometimes it becomes partisan, and it's not popular because most of our funding goes to highway projects. Very important. Don't want to help take away, but we need to look at enhancing other modes of transportation. Judge, last I remember, I think you were, it was right after you were in the legislature, didn't y'all pass a rail relocation plan? Did y'all fund it? Still unfunded. It still sits there. A lot of great plans, but how are we going to execute? And it all comes back down to money. And some of the questions we read, we have a little deal, I keep calling it C-STAR. But when we hear, when constituents or legislators contact us with different challenges, sometimes it's just a billing error, but sometimes you'll see items on there. What about a rail crossing or there's a train? They'll contact us. Of course, they'll still contact the Railroad Commission thinking they're going to take care of the railroad. Still don't know how we got that name. But there's issues in mobility. Right outside of Tyler, you look at things moving goods and services. We've all got to we have to coexist, and we need to find a way to move goods and services and people. I am not opposed to what's coming about in looking at the high-speed rail. As a citizen, and I've got to be careful what I'm saying as a citizen and as an appointed official. We've got to embrace moving goods and services. And when I started looking, I have a lot of help putting together footnotes and things like that. Well, there's a big asterisk on everything that we're saying today, and it's a great day to be talking about transportation. It's called Amazon. Look at what's possible. Now, you see how Austin and Dallas stack up a little bit for overall transportation and different modes of being able to move goods and services. Well, as public transit, the more the Class 1 rail, we can move freight and get it off our roads. Then you start looking at a higher speed to moving people. We can't build our roads fast enough. Let's go back to the 1960s. TxDOT, our funding at the state level used to represent about 36-37% of the state budget that was controlled to go out. Now it's down just barely over 15%. Think about that. Funding's going down, population's going up, car vehicle miles traveled going up. It seems like we have a recipe for future disaster. Thank you to the legislature, for anybody that's in here, and the voters that have helped pass Prop 1 and Prop 7. But by no means do I want to say that it's completely solved. We have some major problems here in the Metroplex. We have in Austin and in Houston, San Antonio that we have to solve. And depending on which way we go, we're forced in a position to say, Dallas, you come before San Antonio, or Houston, you come before Fort Worth or Austin. And that's not a good situation to be in. So we've got to coexist, find ways. But at the same time, multiple modes of transportation are critical. Being able to move. And one thing I want to say, I'm really proud of what our team has done. The legislature, when I say I'm kind of laughing which way there's wind blowing. One of the rail projects, I think it got torqued up. In some cases, maybe rightly so. In some cases, I think there's a lot of false information going around. All this to be said of whose property is it, et cetera, where does it go? I love property rights, but I love when we're chair of the RMA, when we were building our toll road in Tyler, I get tickled. Our former chairman at the time, Ron Boone. Some of y'all may know Boone, Boone and Boone Construction. We were at a hearing, and at the very end, he got up, he said, "I've had enough." Everybody's talking about where this road is going to be built and coming back over is going to take my house and et cetera. He got up and said, "I'm with you. I don't like it, but taking your house and this, that, and the other. But I'm pissed at every one of you because where your house is, that used to be my farm. And I used to duck hunt out there." So it's all a matter of perspective. And when you look at the vision, there's going to be pain in wherever we are. There's pain in decisions. Growth brings painful decisions, whether it's funding infrastructure, funding the very things that we rely on: fire protection, police protection, education, jails, and we keep coming back in. Everybody's competing for the similar funding. Infrastructure seems to be left off. And I know many of you, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir at some point, but we have got to do a better job to keep multimodal, I say, at the forefront as an option, and don't do away with any options that we have in the state, because there will be a right time for the right mode. Federally, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with Trump, with the president's infrastructure bill. We're seeing hints that is beginning to come back out. Really appreciate what Senator Cornyn did. Many of y'all probably saw where he's coming back out, filing, I believe, the BUILD Act to raise the caps on private activity bonds. The poster child for private activity bonds in transportation is right up the street here on the LBJ. Very, very successful. I'm speaking to a group that understands P3s, because in Class 1 with the railroads, y'all have been doing this for a lot longer than what we have. And when you look at private activity bonds, the reason that cap is important for surface transportation, because with seaports, airports, and rail, there is no cap. We have a cap for road infrastructure. We're the latecomers. And it's important that we all work together to try to find a way. One other thing that's interesting is you look at federal, I really appreciate what some of our federal team with TxDOT has done in holding the hearings on the toppers, Texas-Oklahoma rail line. We're just about through with that, with the line that is coming out. We use federal dollars to look at the environmental from San Antonio to Monterrey, Mexico. This was a grassroots effort coming up, supported by the community. Let's find a right way. And what that does, TxDOT's role is now over. We've got it teed up for private investment. I keep coming back to Amazon. Private investment coming into this state. It's critical. This is one thing that this state was built on. We can't do it all alone. There's not enough state money. Our bank doesn't have enough money to loan. A lot of banks, but where I'm leading, we can't do it by ourselves. Whether it's P3, using the right tools at the right time, teeing up for private investment, that's what TxDOT has helped do. And for that line, coming back in, listening to Congressman Cuellar and the locals down there, I was with them when we met with USDOT with a contingent from the governor's office in Nuevo Leon. I hate saying it, but in some cases, I think they may be a little further ahead than what we are doing as a state. They have the right-of-way ready to go. They're committing capital. Now, whether they'll follow through and do it's a whole other proposition. But what they're saying and talking about is they're way ahead of us. As a Texan, I kind of don't like that. But we can control our destiny. I feel we have to be open, and watching what happens with the federal bill will bring new opportunities. And I guess just kind of in closing, and I'll be happy to answer a couple questions. The political winds are going to continue to blow. They've blown before. Hurricanes have come, we've rebuilt, and they've gone before. The best thing that can happen, we're going to react, with what the governor gives us direction and the legislature. If we don't like what it is, one way or the other, I would encourage you to speak to the legislators, but they need an example. How is this going to help me? How is the rail going to help me? How is the passenger rail or transit? I keep coming back to Amazon. They're looking at Dallas. I applaud what DART has done, what Austin has done with some of the transit. But DART, I think, is huge. You look at the stations and where it might go within the Metroplex. That's huge. And it took a lot of pain and a lot of vision for those to get here. How many of y'all have actually ridden the DART? That's good. A lot of people have it, and they're scared to. They don't know what it's about. And I would just encourage to try something, and that's part of our job, is to educate, whether it's roads, airports, rail. As part of the Texas Transportation Department, we are involved in all modes. And, yeah, there's discussion, do you separate this or take it out? There's no place better than what we're doing. Having just celebrated our 100th year, as we look at our next 100 years, it's going to change. What we have today, it may be a foundation. It's going to change. The people, the personalities, the modes, and how we pay for it is going to change. But what we can't stop is the education and talking about the success that we've already had. And there have been a lot of successes. It's easy to get down and say, oh, our funding's not coming towards rail. Celebrate the successes, talk about the economic multiplier, and whether it's a roadway or the railway, look at the wealth creation that's taken place along these corridors that we can celebrate. That's what has built this country. That's what's built Texas. And if we shut off everything, we're basically putting up a sign. We're building a wall around this state saying, don't come to Texas. That's not what I think a lot of us want. Our businesses, our supply chains, our basic needs all count on this. Now, I would have to say my wall comment. I know somebody stood up a while ago saying from Oklahoma. I still think we ought to put the wall along the Red River, but that's the horn in me. With that, thank y'all. I know there's a lot going on. Don't be discouraged by the conversations. Use this as an opportunity to share the stories appropriately, not whining, but share the right stories of why this is important to the state, to your community, more specifically your personal life and your business life, how it impacts what's going on. Those are the stories that aren't being told, and I would encourage each and every one of you, your businesses, your friends, family, to do the same thing. If you have time, I'll be happy to answer a couple questions. Yes, sir.
Charles Florio, Longview. My wife and I ride the train from Longview to Austin to visit our family, and I noticed many of the passengers are, number one, poor, number two, crippled, number three, old. Do any of those groups ever address the commission when you're talking about passenger rail, please?
And let me be honest, we don't really have the jurisdiction over the passenger rail. Our role has been in facilitating the studies to help select. Every time we do, whether it's, let me use the most recent one from San Antonio to Monterey, there's a public opportunity for public comment. That's the appropriate time for them to address that we would receive the comments. As it relates to the Amtrak route, that's another jurisdiction that we don't really have any control over. We may partner working with the Class 1s, depending or crossings, things like that, but that's really where they need to direct that. Yes, ma'am.
How much do you think that all future passenger rail projects are going to be kneecapped by the bills that were designed to limit the Texas Central?
Somebody asked me a similar comment the other night, and forgive the lack of humor thereof, but I saw I guess one of the stories talking about Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding, getting hit in the kneecaps, and I think sometimes that's where it kind of feels like. I think it's a re-education, and it's coming back, and this is from our perspective, eminent domain, if properly used, is adequate, can be okay for the right reasons. Improperly used can be wrong or threatened. And I think this is where, when you look at acquiring right-of-way, private negotiation is completely different than use of eminent domain. And whether if I'm building a new bank building, that's private negotiation. But when I've served on the board of a school district before, private negotiation worked better than our use of eminent domain or with the city or anybody else. So I think private negotiation is still key. I felt that's part of the intent of the legislature coming back of allowing the private negotiation to go forward. But if we continue to stop outside private investment, this state would shrink. And I think that's one thing that my take is that the state did not do is say we do not want outside investment to come in. I mean, they stopped short of saying we need outside investment. That's what's helped build it. I don't see it being completely shut down. The framework has changed. One, we can't use any state dollars. That's not all bad, because for private investment to work, you need the outside folks coming in. Now, there's a role for us if with federal dollars to plan. I don't think there's anybody better that can do the planning than our team before you start sending it out to too many people. So somewhere, maybe the pendulum swings to you have some involvement. But the legislature's given us a direction right now. We will not spend any state dollars on the high-speed rail. But that doesn't mean we're still not in, people are still asking us questions and still involved, but we're very careful of making sure it's limited to federal dollars. Good question. Any more questions? Comment? All right. Thank you very much.
We didn't put you on the hot seat.
No.